Did you know this about Ragnar Lothbrok? Ragnar Lothbrok was a famous Viking warrior and king, known for his courage, strength and clever mind. He was said to be a descendant of Odin, the Allfather, which made him believe he was destined for greatness. As a young man, Ragnar dreamed of exploring new lands across the sea. He was not just a fierce warrior, but also a brilliant strategist who used his intelligence to outsmart his enemies. Unlike other Vikings, he was curious about the world and eager to discover new lands and riches. But was Ragnar just a myth, or was he a real Viking leader? Historians believe he was based on several real warriors, whose stories merged into one legendary figure over time. Ragnar's adventures would take him across Scandinavia, England and France, making him one of the most feared Vikings of all time. But before he could become a great leader, he had to prove himself in battle. Ragnar's journey began as a simple farmer, but he knew he was destined for more. He trained hard, becoming one of the strongest and smartest warriors of his time. He also learned to build longships, the fast and powerful boats that helped the Vikings conquer distant lands. One of his first great victories was against a powerful earl, nobleman, who ruled over his homeland. With the help of his loyal warriors, Ragnar defeated the earl and took his place as leader. This was the beginning of his path to power. But a great Viking leader needed more than just strength, he needed a queen. That's when Ragnar met Lagertha, a legendary shield maiden. She was fierce, brave, and as skilled in battle as any man. Together, they fought side by side and became one of the most famous Viking couples in history. With a strong army and an even stronger queen, Ragnar was ready for his greatest adventure yet, the raids on England. The Vikings had long told stories of rich lands across the sea, filled with gold and treasures. But no one had dared to sail there, until Ragnar. Using his new longships, Ragnar led his warriors across the dangerous North Sea to the shores of England. They landed at a monastery in Lindisfarne in the year 793 AD, marking the beginning of the Viking Age. The English were completely unprepared for the Viking attack. They had never seen warriors so fierce, wearing wolf and bear skins, wielding axes and swords. Ragnar and his men took gold, silver, and treasures back to Scandinavia, proving that England was a land worth raiding again. But Ragnar was not just a raider, he was a visionary. He saw England not just as a place to raid, but as a land to conquer and settle. However, his growing power would soon make him many enemies, including the kings of England. As Ragnar's fame grew, so did the number of enemies who wanted to see him fall. Among them was King Ella of Northumbria, who saw the Vikings as a great threat to his kingdom. Meanwhile, Ragnar's personal life was also changing. He divorced Lagertha and married a new woman, Aslog, who was said to be the daughter of a legendary dragon slayer. She would give Ragnar many sons, who would later become famous warriors themselves. But betrayal was never far away. Some of Ragnar's closest allies began to doubt him, believing he was growing too ambitious. Others saw his sons as a threat to their own power. Despite these challenges, Ragnar continued to expand his kingdom and raid new lands. But his next challenge would not come from England, it would come from France. Like if you're enjoying the story so far. Ragnar had heard stories of the great city of Paris, one of the richest and most powerful cities in Europe. He believed that if he could conquer Paris, he would become the greatest Viking of all time. In 845 AD, Ragnar led a massive fleet of 120 Viking ships up the Seine River and attacked Paris. The Franks, led by King Charles the Bald, tried to defend their city, but Ragnar's warriors were too strong. They surrounded Paris, cutting off its food and supplies. The city was on the brink of collapse, and King Charles had no choice but to pay Ragnar a huge ransom to make him leave. It was one of the greatest Viking victories in history. But success made Ragnar reckless. He had become overconfident, believing he was invincible. His next raid would lead him to his greatest defeat. Ragnar, now older and eager for one last great adventure, decided to return to England. But this time, things were different. He sailed with only a small crew, believing that his reputation alone would make the English surrender. But King Ella had been waiting for revenge. He captured Ragnar and threw him into a pit of venomous snakes. As the snakes bit him, Ragnar laughed, knowing that his death would only make his sons more powerful. Before he took his last breath, he prophesied that his sons would avenge him and bring destruction to England. His death would mark the beginning of a new Viking era, led by his legendary sons. After Ragnar's death, his sons, Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, Vitsirk, and Ube, gathered a massive Viking army known as the Great Heathen Army. In 865 AD they launched one of the largest Viking invasions in history. They burned cities, defeated armies, and finally captured King Ella. To avenge their father, they gave him a brutal Viking punishment known as the Blood Eagle. With England in chaos, Ragnar's sons continued his dream of conquering new lands. But the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok would never be forgotten. Was Ragnar Lothbrok real, or was he just a legend? Historians believe he was based on multiple Viking warriors whose stories were combined into one epic tale. What is certain is that his legacy shaped Viking history. His sons became some of the greatest warriors of their time, and his adventures inspired sagas, books, and even modern TV shows. Even today, Ragnar's name is remembered as the fearless Viking who challenged kings, raided distant lands, and changed history forever. Would you have followed Ragnar on his journey?